Minasan konnichiwa. Honorable audience, I would like to start by thanking very much Kohara Sensei and the Center of Interdisciplinary Studies of Monotheistic Religions at Doshisha University for giving me that great privilege and honor to be here today among you, speaking at such a distinguished conference. And I wish to extend my thanks to my compatriot and dear friend, Professor Samir Nuh, and for Dr. Shinway from the center. I'm particularly privileged for three reasons. The first is the outstanding reputation and achievement by SISMOR in its field of studies and competence as a comparative and interdisciplinary study of monotheistic religions and creating more understanding and better grounds for interaction with the three monotheistic Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, Islam in Japan, and outside Japan as well, in the whole world. The second reason I'm privileged today is the presence of two outstanding and distinguished professors and scholars in this field that I'm really honored to be among them today. Professor Dr. Wahba Zuhaili, professor at Damascus University, and my own compatriot, Professor Dr. Muhammad Al-Hawari from Ain Shams University. The third reason for being privileged in this conference is the topic of the conference itself and its subject, which is very timely, and I think I should say very eminent in terms of its importance and the discussion it undertakes now about it. Usually I don't use written text, but as agreed by the host and the organizer and by our charming interpreters today, I'll try my best to stick to this text in order not to cause any difficulties in following it from the distinguished audience here. Well, allow me first to say very briefly in the introduction that throughout history we have learned that all religions and even non-religious ideologies have been amenable to different interpretations and have been playing different roles. This depended on a number of complex and occasionally interrelated factors, including the affiliation of the interpreters of that religion or ideology, as well as the interests that guide their interpretation, their movement, and their action. As correctly mentioned by Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, karramallahu wajha, the fourth Khalifa after Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and the first Imam according to Shia Muslims, Imam Ali said more than 14 centuries ago, although the holy text is one, this holy text can be interpreted in different ways. And he mentioned that about even the holy text of Islam, the Quran al-Karim. So it's in Arabic, it says, Al-Quran Hammal Awjuh. Therefore, it was only normal to see throughout human history, and particularly including throughout Islamic history, that the same religion being used by rulers who have been practicing oppressive practices, or certain social classes that have been practicing exploitative practices, using religion in order to justify these practices. On the other hand, it has been also normal to see others who use religion to drag their societies in a direction looking towards the past, rather than moving towards the future. And they had their own interpretation of the religious text to support their case. Still, we had a third party that considered religion a call for freedom and liberalization, and that the call of religion is one to free humankind from any oppression or exploitation by fellow human beings. Again, we had witnessed the fourth group arguing that religion has been, in fact, advocating the supremacy of the toiling classes, of the working classes. And still, we had even much more interpretations of religion throughout history. Allow me now to move to the subject matter of my presentation, which is the role of religion in Egypt. First, I will go, if you allow me, with an overview of the historical evolution of the role of religion in Egypt. I think this is important in order to understand where we stand today, which I will come to later. I believe that any of you who has had the opportunity to visit Egypt, or to live in Egypt, or to study Egyptian history, or even I would go further to say who has Egyptian friends or colleagues, would easily realize that religion was and is an integral part of the conscience of the Egyptian character. The ancient Greek philosopher Herodotus told us once that Egyptians are religious to a higher degree than any other peoples he had witnessed. I think we can safely argue that without the ancient Egyptian religion, there would be much less to see in Egypt of ancient Egypt today. The Great Pyramids would not exist, and there would be no fabulous temples or tombs in the west bank of Thebes, which is now called Luxor, city of Luxor in southern Egypt. And we would not see the mummies or the colorful decorations that adorn the structures that are remnants of ancient Egyptian civilization, of which many travelers to Egypt, including many Japanese tourists, like to enjoy in Egypt because it takes them thousands of years back in the past. Behind every aspect of Egyptian life, including the art, the culture, the political structure, the social norms and traditions, one can clearly feel the influence of religious forces that shaped the fabric of ancient Egypt. The spiritual world that was created by the ancient Egyptians was a rich and fascinating one, which remains unique in the history of human religion, despite the fact that it definitely influenced following religions, either worldwide or as far as the practice of these religions is concerned in Egypt. The old ancient Egyptian religion was both mysterious and manifest at the same time. It was accessible and hidden. For although the Egyptian religion was often folded in layers of myth and rituals, it nevertheless permeated the ancient civilization of the Nile and ultimately shaped, influenced, and sustained many aspects of Egyptian state, society, and culture until today. In the ancient religion of Egypt, people were very much concerned about the afterlife. Furthermore, in order to avoid being counted among the damned on earth, one had to pay due respect and tribute to the Egyptian gods at that time. But still, one has to live by a code of conduct because they knew that there would be a judgment after death. All these elements have been similar, if not in some cases identical, to beliefs held later by the Egyptians and other people of the world under the monotheistic religions. Like any members of other human communities, ancient Egyptians were keen to find an answer to the question of existence. However, there were also other foreign influence on their own religions. For example, the religion was needed not for purely spiritual reasons, but again, and as I mentioned in my introduction, to justify certain practices of rulers, as well as to ensure obedience to these rulers. On the other hand, some used this religion in order to justify revolt against the rulers once their practices were perceived as oppressive. We cannot say with any exact certainty when were the foundations of ancient Egyptian religions were laid down, although it was certainly before recorded history. In fact, some of the important mythology, such as the story of Horus, could have possibly been rooted in real events that took place prior to Egypt's unification. Consistently from the beginning of the ancient Egyptian religion to its final status at the Temple of Philae, with possibly the exception of one brief period, majority of scholars would agree that such religion was polytheistic. A number of attempts have been made to explain Egyptian ancient religion in terms of monotheism. And certainly scholars of the 19th century in particular, influenced by Christian traditions, tended to find trace of monotheism in ancient Egyptian beliefs. The main evidence they cited was the anonymous god whom the Egyptian people referred to, whether in meditation or literary texts. Now, however, the anonymous god found in Egyptian text is understood to represent a way of invoking any divine power emanating from gods, or sometimes a specific or assumed god worshipped by an individual or a god in a specific region or province in Egypt at that time. Even during the 18th dynasty of Amenhotep IV, better known as Akhenaton, who apparently tried to introduce and promote a single god, Aton, as an Egyptian religion, one couldn't argue that Egyptian religion has been totally monotheistic. For while the ruler, the king, or the pharaoh himself may have worshipped a single god, and even that is still not totally certain, his religion never spread over or sustained itself, as for the most part, Egyptians in general continued to worship their traditional gods and reverted to their original religion after the end of his rule. However, we should bear in mind the concept of manifestation. This concept that is frequently misunderstood by the general public